The history of the horse is deeply etched into the history of conflict, but no horse breed and no mounted force achieved the scale of conquest of the Mongols. In the 13th century, a unified force under the leadership of Temujin, who would become Genghis Khan, exploded across the globe. From Korea to Hungary, they conquered and controlled an empire spanning over 12 million square miles in just a few decades. This unprecedented conquest was not built on advanced metallurgy or superior engineering. It was built on a small, shaggy, tireless animal, the Mongol horse. This horse was not just transportation, it was the strategic foundation, the arsenal, and the very lifeblood of the Mongol war machine. It was the crucial element that allowed them to move faster, hit harder, and sustain combat longer than any army of the time. To understand the Mongol Empire, you must first understand the Mongol steppe, a land of brutal temperature swings, sparse forage, and immense open space. The horse that emerged from this environment was perfectly adapted for sustained, self-sufficient warfare. The Mongol horse is a product of this ecological pressure cooker. It is small, typically standing between 12 and 14 hands high. It is short, stocky, with thick bones, a heavy winter coat, and a wide, large head. By the standards of the European chivalry, it would have been dismissed as a shaggy, unrefined pony. But these physical traits were the exact keys to its tactical supremacy. The first key trait was hardiness and autonomy. The Mongol horse could survive the harsh Central Asian winters, often using its thick skull and forelegs to literally dig through snow and ice to find forage, a practice called tebene. It was rarely shod, relying on its naturally hard, resilient hooves, and required minimal human intervention or specialized feeding. This profound self-sufficiency meant that a Mongol army could operate indefinitely without relying on cumbersome supply trains for grain and hay, the critical vulnerability of all conventional armies. While a European army's movement was limited by the proximity of its supply wagons, the Mongol army carried its supplies on its horses and fed its horses from the land. The second key trait was unmatched endurance. The Mongols practiced a unique form of horsemanship that involved traveling vast distances at a sustained moderate trot or amble rather than an energy-sapping gallop. They mastered the art of maximizing speed over distance. By alternating their pace and horses, they could maintain a relentless speed for days on end, routinely covering 60 to 80 miles per day. This ability to arrive rapidly, often undetected, allowed them to choose the time and place of battle, overwhelming their enemies with the sheer shock of their sudden presence. The ability to surprise enemies by covering hundreds of miles in under a week was arguably the single greatest logistical advantage in the entire medieval world. The horse was not just transportation, it was a mobile survival pack and a key cultural component. It was the primary source of the Mongol soldiers' battlefield diet, providing kumis, fermented mare's milk. The fermentation process made the drink stable, high-calorie, slightly alcoholic, and nutrient-rich, perfectly fueling the strenuous nomadic lifestyle and sustaining the riders on long journeys. Furthermore, in dire circumstances, the Mongol soldier could make a small incision in the horse's neck and drink its blood for sustenance, a grim but incredibly effective survival tactic that underlined the profound life and death relationship between man and mount. The fact that the animal was small also contributed to its utility. Being lighter, it required less forage than the massive European war horses, and was generally easier to quickly handle and mount. Its smaller size made it agile and less likely to break down under the sustained rigors of campaign life. The Mongol soldiers' effectiveness was rooted in the seamless integration of his saddle, his bow, and his horse management system. The horse was transformed into the ultimate weapons platform. The tactical use of the horse was defined by its equipment. The stirrup was absolutely critical. Introduced from Central Asia, the stirrup allowed the rider to stand, balance, and turn in the saddle. Without it, the powerful techniques of the mounted archer would be ineffective. Coupled with a large wooden saddle that had high front and back cantles, the stirrup gave the rider the necessary stability to withstand the jolt of firing the bow at a full run. This stability allowed the rider to deliver a shock of kinetic energy into the back of the horse, which was essential for executing the famous Parthian shot, firing backward while in full simulated retreat. The primary weapon of the Mongol was the composite recurve bow. This bow was a marvel of ancient engineering. Made from layers of horn, wood, and sinew, glued together with animal bladder, it was small enough to be used from horseback, but possessed a devastating draw weight of over 100 pounds. This power translated into incredible range and penetration, capable of punching through the light leather armor of many opponents. A single Mongol warrior typically carried 2 or 3 bows to account for breakage from moisture or temperature changes, and multiple quivers holding 60 or more arrows each. This ensured the warrior was a riding artillery platform, capable of sustaining fire for extended periods of time. However, the true tactical genius, the secret that military historians often cite as the biggest game changer, was the system of multiple horses. Every Mongol warrior was in effect a mounted cavalry officer and a logistics quartermaster rolled into one. He traveled with a personal relay of 3 to 5 horses, known as the kash or horse herd. This meant that a fresh horse could be mounted every few hours. This constant switching allowed the army to maintain its relentless high-speed pace indefinitely, while simultaneously giving the other mounts the necessary periods of rest and recovery. When engaging the enemy, the warrior rode his designated battle horse, keeping the rest of the herd close behind, managed by a groom or sometimes even another warrior. The systematic rotation of animal energy was the ultimate form of biological logistics and provided the stamina needed to run circles around the heavier, slower European or Chinese armies. The reliance on the horse transformed the Mongol army from a mere military force into a fully mobilized, self-sustaining society. This gave them a logistical superiority that was often insurmountable. The vast logistical advantage lay in the absence of traditional supply lines. Unlike the conventional armies of Europe and Asia, which were tied to slow, cumbersome supply carts carrying grain, wine, and salted meat, the Mongols carried their supplies in the saddle and on the hoof. This negated the need for long, vulnerable supply lines, which were the Achilles heel of all conventional armies. The Mongol force could simply bypass cities and fortresses, moving deep into enemy territory without fear of starvation. Campaign planning was inherently tied to the health of the horse herds. Mongol armies advanced on a wide front, often tens of miles wide, and never followed the exact same path twice. This tactic allowed the massive horse herds to graze continuously on fresh pasture and ensured their fodder was never locally depleted. Their advance into enemy territory was not just a military action, but an ecological one. The discipline required to maintain these vast moving herds was legendary. The Mongol army was constantly structured around the protection and management of its horses, with severe punishment, often death, reserved for any soldier who was found to be neglecting or mistreating his mounts. The health of the horse directly determined the survival of the army and the emperor. The Mongol camp, the Ordu, was not a static base, but a massive mobile city that moved with the army. The wives and families, though kept far from the immediate battlefield, were themselves highly mobile and capable of maintaining the essential infrastructure, including managing the vast remount herds. This societal mobilization meant that the entire empire's resources were dedicated to supporting the efficiency of the mounted soldier. The primary, most terrifying tactic was based on mobility and misdirection: the feigned retreat. The Mongol line would charge, loose a devastating volley of arrows, and then suddenly turn and run, often in a panicked, disorganized appearance.
The enemy cavalry, often heavier, armored, and less disciplined, would commit to the pursuit, hoping to break the Mongol line. However, during the pursuit, the retreating Mongols would execute the Parthian shot, raining arrows down on the enemy from a distance they could not reach. Once the enemy was scattered, exhausted, and bleeding from numerous arrow wounds, the Mongols would suddenly reform, switch to fresh battle horses, and destroy the disorganized pursuers with lances and sabers. This maneuver was used repeatedly to lure and destroy the most formidable Polish and Hungarian knights in the European campaigns. The endurance of the Mongol horse also allowed for deep penetration raids. Instead of a direct engagement, Mongol armies could simply bypass cities and fortresses, moving deep into enemy territory. This terrorized the civilian population and forced fortified armies to leave the safety of their walls. Even when besieging a city, the horse played a critical role. The cavalry would form a screen around the city, preventing any communication, supply relief, or escape. Their rapid response capabilities meant that any relief army attempting to aid the besieged city could be met and destroyed far from the city walls. In key battles, like the campaigns against the Hungarians and Poles in 1241, this supreme mobility allowed Mongol forces to strike simultaneously in widely separated areas, splitting the enemy's resources and ensuring total tactical surprise. The speed of their campaign in Europe shocked the continent, earning the Mongols the terrifying moniker, the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. While the Mongol horse facilitated the rapid expansion, it also set the limits of the empire. The horse's reliance on grasslands made the conquest of forested regions like parts of Central Europe and Southeast Asia, and naval powers like Japan, significantly harder or impossible. The horses could not operate effectively without their native fodder, tying the empire's bower base to the Central Asian ecology. The empire's supreme communication network, the famous YAM, the postal system, was built entirely on the horse. This system of horse relay stations allowed official messengers to travel up to 200 miles a day, effectively shrinking the vast distances and enabling the seamless governance of the empire, a logistical miracle built entirely on equine power. However, the cost of maintaining the YAM and the devastating ecological strain of overgrazing by millions of horses eventually strained the resources of the conquered territories. Ultimately, the Mongol horse, the very tool of unification, contributed to the empire's fragmentation. As the empire stabilized, the various khanates, such as the Golden Horde, the Ilkhanate, and the Yuan dynasty, developed slightly different military and equestrian traditions. The rise of gunpowder and heavy infantry formations also eventually reduced the effectiveness of the horse archer. The decline of the unified Mongol horse culture mirrored the decline of the empire itself. The Mongol horse was more than a breed. It was a technological and cultural system. It was the military supply line, the communication network, the food source, and the weapon platform. The Mongol cavalry's success proved that in warfare, speed and endurance often trumped heavy armor and sheer size. The sound of thunder that swept across the 13th century world was the sound of millions of unshod hooves carrying the largest empire the planet has ever known. The mobility afforded by the Mongol horse allowed for military strategies that were simply impossible for their rivals to replicate or counter. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel for more horse history, and also check some of our videos on your screen right now.